Okay. This is an interview with Stephen R. Dorsey, New York State Military Museum, Saratoga Springs, New York, the 18th of June, 2003, approximately 3:30 p.m. Interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
My full name is Stephen R. Dorsey. I was born in West Islip, New York, on August the 26th, 1913.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering military service?
Well, I got out of high school when I was 19. I had applied for admission to Columbia University. But at that time, the colleges were cutting back on bringing in coal miners from Pittsburgh, as part of their football team. So I was pretty wound up in high school with athletics. I played 4 years of state base regularly. I won the county championship with golf. We formed the golf cheer in the last year that I came back to get my extra degree that I needed. But I couldn't get into Columbia. Columbia said, we're not accepting anybody at this point. So back I go. My father was out of work. He had started building. He got on a WPA, $15 a week, $5 a day, picking up trash along the roadways. And that's when I went back for my extra course. We didn't have a golf team. I got the boys from West Islip, and we were all ex-caddies, and most of us played pretty good golf. We played 8 matches the first year, and we won 6 of the 8 matches, which was unheard of, But I didn't play any basketball. My family said, you're in enough sports now. You're in baseball in the spring and football in the fall. So that was my limit. I knew I couldn't get into Columbia, so I caddied for the owner of the company that I was working for, Herbert J. Yates. He's gone now, thank God. And
well, I'm going to go ask you one question. Do you recall where you were when you heard about Pearl Harbor and what your reaction was to that?
Yes. We had gone up to Connecticut to visit my wife's sister. She had two sisters and 2 boys. He was a farmer. My wife was a girl that quit high school. We were coming back from Danbury, Connecticut, when we heard the news on the radio, and I was just shocked to think that all the fleet had been bombed. What a terrible beating we took in Hawaii. And there wasn't much I could do. I was working at the time. I had my mother, who was also a very capable stenographer, was working for General Tire, working for the Eastern Coast Manager. So the both of us worked. I made a big $24 a week, and I think she made $26 a week. That was a big pay. But the banks were closed. Roosevelt had closed the banks, and you just couldn't find a job. My father was working for $15 for 3 days a week when he could get it, you know. And I waited, and I finally caddied for Yates one day, and I said to him, "Do you have any openings?" He says, "Come in Monday, and we'll see what we can do for you." So I went in Monday, and his son ran the Treasury Department. He interviewed me. He said, "Yeah, we can use you. We'll pay you $12 a week." I said, "Oh, that's a job," and I was glad to have it. And I had stayed with that company for 26 years, and they finally went bankrupt. They made one decent picture. They made, I guess, about 8 or 10 pictures with John Wayne in it, but all of his pictures flopped because Yates had brought across from Czechoslovakia a female ice skater, and she was a fancy skater, and he fell in love with her. He had three boys, and one daughter, and in time his wife passed away, and he remarried this woman. She's still running. She's still at the coast, rather, living out there. Brought her mother over and her brother, and they were all given prominent jobs. Then he finally sold out.
Now, did you enlist, or were you drafted into the service?
I was drafted.
When did you enter the service?
I entered the service in May of 43.
And what branch of service?
I ended up in a rifle platoon. What else is it? We were a rifle company, the 69th Division, and the commander of that company was given leave of the company that he had, and somehow he was able to get back. He knew somebody in Washington, and they gave him another chance, so he became our commander-in-chief. So I had training in Camp Shelby in Alabama, and I was there almost a year when they interviewed me and they asked me if I wanted to go to OCS. I said I'd welcome the chance, and I went to OCS and I did very well. And I went in as a staff sergeant, and then I got my degree, and then I became a second lieutenant. And then they decided they're going to ship out the nucleus of the troops that might be available to them right now, because the war was winding up in our favor. And I was picked, so I went in May and had about a year of training at Shelby, and then I got the call to go to Fort Benning to become an officer. So I became a second lieutenant. And then when I got through there, they sent me to Florida as a second lieutenant to train the troops. And at that time I smoked. And we had a break in the training. Our superior officer had us in this oak room. It was, we called it oak room. It was a story of, what would I call it? Trapping or finding your way out of an unknown situation. You know, that was was one of the must things. And one day, I had a group of men. We were putting them through the obstacle course, and they had the scale where they would climb up and go over it. A couple of the boards were missing. So an inspecting officer came around. He said, "Where are the boards?" I said, "I don't know. I just have been told to take these men out to this area and give them the training." And that's what I was doing. Went out to, he went inside. Well, we were outside at the time, smoking a cigarette. We were on a break. And he went inside and raised hell with the instructor. "You got two men out there that don't know what the hell they're doing, you know? They're not doing their job." He said, "There's broken timbers on scaffolding, yeah, and these guys are just, you know, running the men through it." 2 days later, this other fellow and I were on shipping orders overseas. And we had been in Florida maybe 6 months at the least with training. And then we went over on Aquitania with the crew for the ship and about 15 other ships in the convoy. And we ended up in Scotland, and in Scotland we rode the trains down to England, into Liverpool, and then across to the canal to the French, and they put us on 40 and 8s, and we ended up, you know, being assigned to a group.
Now, did you go in as replacements?
Yes, as replacements, yeah.
What unit did you end up with?
What unit was it? It was, I think, the 9th Infantry. We passed our old outfit, the 69th, on the road. After we got through with Belgium. It was the 9th Infantry, and I forget what regiment that was.
That's okay. Yeah. When did you reach Belgium?
We reached Belgium within 3 or 4 days of landing in France. France was cleared. Belgium had been cleared already, and they were moving troops up to the river to cross into Berlin.
This was after the Bulge, then?
After
the Battle of the Bulge?
Yes,
This was in, okay, probably the spring of 45?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Did you go right into the front lines, or?
We did a lot of small towns that we hit, heading towards Berlin, and we would hold back. My platoon was 39 men. I was in charge of them. We'd take the platoon, we'd split it, half on one side of the road, half on the other, but inland, heading towards Berlin. And then we get instructions to hold up for the tanks to catch up with us, you know. Then the tanks came along, we rode the tanks for a while. And then when we got to Berlin, we had to hold up because the Russians were given the privilege of being the first ones in Berlin. And Hitler by that time had taken off somewhere, or I don't know what happened to the bastard. But that was the end of it.
Did you ever have any encounters with the Russian troops?
Only in the camp. We went to a camp in Hemer, H-E-M-E-R, Germany. They had 25,000 prisoners, all Allied. mostly Russian, that they had brought back with them, and we had the French troops that they captured, and all the Allies. That
Now, were you in liberating these camps, or were these people already liberated?
No, we weren't liberated yet, no. We got to the camp, and we heard through the grapevine that President Roosevelt had died.
What was your reaction to that? How did you feel when you heard about that?
I know, I felt I lost a friend, because and then I got out in 33, high school, and he put through some tough stops, like you could only buy milk maybe for $5 cents a quart. And I felt that he was trying to hold the thing together, but the war brought the country to a climax, because when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, everybody wanted to volunteer to win. But I was going steady with my intended wife, and I stayed with her. She worked in New York. I worked in New York. We got married in 37. We lived together for 60 years before she finally passed away. She raised 2 kids, Mary Ann and my son, Stephen, who he wanted to know where he should go. He was in the Navy, and he had the ships that were on Roosevelt, all the big ships. And one day we get a phone call. He calls us from London. And we didn't have that kind of money at that time.
I'm going to go back to the the Russians and French and so on that you liberated from the camps.
Right.
What kind of condition were they in?
We didn't see too much of them, because we were put in a special area. They had a little bachelor's building, and the Red Cross came in once. We were actually in prison for 2 weeks, and then we were liberated. And that night, my sergeant...
Now, you were captured?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we were captured.
Where were you captured?
And where they had the... I think it was it Salzburg, or I can't remember the name, but I went back 40 years later to look up at the town, and the camp was gone. They had demolished it and put up apartments.
Now, how long were you in this the camp?
2 weeks.
What were the conditions like when you arrived there?
The conditions were bad. There were people being carried out all day long that were dying. Some of them got, I think, soup once a day. We were lucky we got soup twice a day, because we were officers.
Now, what kind of guards did you have? Were they older men or young boys?
Older guys that had the keys and whatnot, you know, and they became a little bit friendly with us. And then this one day, the day we were liberated, the guy comes out over the mountaintop like a raised plateau, and I said, "Where the hell are the troops?" This guy was a lone scout. The troops were all behind him, and then the shells started to come one way, and then come the other way. So we went in the basement of the large building there, and we stayed there until the shelling ended. Then our troops just the guards gave up voluntarily. There was no shots fired then, you know, and they got rid of the big guns that were firing at them, you know.
Was the camp all American GIs?
No, the camp was mostly Russian.
Okay, so it was mixed.
And so it was a mixture. And the Russians were dying like fleas, you know, God.
Were they treated any differently than the Americans?
I think so, yes. Yeah, we got treated a little bit better. Yeah, because I guess the guards knew that the war was over for them, you know. And so we got better treatment than I would say the Russians. But when they captured us, it took us 5 days to get to the camp. We had to sleep in chapels, in the church chapels, on the benches, you know.
Was it a forced march?
Yes, yeah. It was forced. Then we would march all day, and then they'd give us a couple of hours of sleep time. Then they'd wake us up again, and then we're off again. And we're just walking. We saw our planes fly over. They took a look at us. We waved our hands, and they realized that we were captured. And there was at least 2 companies that were captured. Our company and I think it was a company. Each had about 250 troops. So we had about 500. And at that time, we were only, well, I'd say 16 days, which was the most we were going to be held. It just didn't seem, we slept in flea bags with hay in them, and rough clothes, bugs and all that stuff.
Were you aware of concentration camps?
Well, I knew it was arbitration camp, and we were not allowed to mix with them because the building was a little bit off-center. But we could look out the window and see the guys were carrying these boards with guys flat dead, you know.
After you were liberated, where did you go?
We went back to France. They picked us up. A fellow, one of the sergeants had a list of names, you know, he called off names. I had gotten a very bad case of diarrhea. I cooked up one of their Spam hams. I haven't touched one since. Oh God, I was dying. I was running over to the latrine, you know, trying to get free. And finally, they said, they're here for a pickup. I said, make sure they get my name, because I want to get out of here.
Were you hospitalized at all? Or
yes, I was hospitalized then when I was in, yeah.
How long were you in the hospital?
Oh, I think just for this was an open field hospital. It wasn't anything fancy, you know.
Where did you go from there?
We went back to out of Paris, I think about 40 miles. And they gave us new clothing. We had one that's not lies, but we had one shower where they took our clothes and whatnot and made sure that the bugs were gone. Then gave us stuff back. And in my pocket, I had a pocket comb. That was all with it, so they put them through the hot air, I guess, to kill the bugs that we had picked up. But on the whole, there wasn't much they could do, because when they saw this big group of troops behind one lone Brooklyn guy, he's waving us on, you know, and then all of a sudden you see tanks come up and they start firing at the ones that were firing at us. A lot of the shells were dropping inside the tent, in the camp rather. But we just stood there, we grabbed cigarettes from the guards, you know. And
when did you return to the States?
we returned to the States. We were in the mid-Atlantic when we heard that the war with Germany was over. I think I got back to the States, it must have been, we went in a day after Easter, 16 days that we were captured. I'd say early May of 43.
Okay. Were you discharged right away, or were you kept in the service?
No.
Because
They sent us to camp. I don't know whether it was at Jersey camp, and interviewed us, and they gave us a 30-day leave. They said you could be with your family now for 30 days. And then we had to report to Macon, Georgia, to an army camp. And from there on, I brought my wife down and then my youngster. And then when we were there, that was in May, we got orders. We were being shipped to Fort Ord in California. And they were still looking ahead of themselves. And they finally, I stopped in at the studio where my boss was, and I said, I can't get out, I don't have enough points. So he said, who's your commander? I said, I really don't know, I haven't checked in yet. So he says, find out his name, and I'll write him a letter. And sure enough, I gave him the name, and he wrote a nice letter. I was making at that time $39 a week, and I had to do a little bit of lying. I said I was also booking pictures for the studio. I booked RKO theaters and all the smaller theaters. And then I was called in for inspection. We have you set to go to Japan. I figured that's why I was sent there.
Now, did they do any extra training, different training?
Yeah, we had a new group of enlisted people. And these big guys were bastards. During the nighttime, they would start calling names. Lieutenant Colonel, horse's ass. And somebody would go around and try to find out who was causing the rumpus, you know. But I was interviewed by a guy, and he says, your salary was listed very low. Why was that? I said, I also worked on commissions. I said, that was my base salary, so I just listed my base salary. I had to do a little lying, you know. And he says, yeah, he says, I want to get out too. The commander at Fort Ord says he was looking to get out. And he writes a nice letter. He realizes that, you know, the fellows that have been taken away from business should be back in doing their job again and not worrying about Japan. But then the war with Japan ended in August, and I give Harry Truman a lot of credit. He took that damn bomb and never tried anywhere. You know, they had explosions of it in the States, and he just knocked the hell out of those cities. He killed thousands and thousands of people, and then they threw in the sponge. But the commander said that he was looking for a way out too. You know, wondered if he could do anything for him. So.
When were you discharged then?
I was discharged in April. April 46.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you go after you were discharged?
Well, I wrapped up the kid. We stayed at Pacific Grove.
We stayed out in California.
Yes, Southern California. And ran into my brother-in-law, Eddie, one of the young fellows. His wife was out there, and he was a chef on board. Oh, he would allot the amount of food that was to be eaten. And then I came back, and I came back to the camp, picked up my stuff. I had my release in my hand, and I had to go to the release department. I went up to San Francisco again, and the guy says to me, "Stay one more day, and you'll be a first lieutenant, not a second lieutenant." I said, "I don't care. I don't want to stay another hour. Get me out of here, you know." So he wrote me. Then I bundled up and went back to Pacific Grove, picked up my daughter and my wife, and we headed for New York. I had an old Dodge. I wasn't making any kind of money at that time. And we tried to get into Mexico to see if we could pick up any souvenirs or whatnot. But they were very strict. They were checking all the cars and whatnot. So we said, "The hell with it." So we came back into the States again, and we rode across the country. It took us three days, full days.
Did you ever make use of the GI Bill?
The GI Bill?
The GI Bill.
Oh, GI Bill? No.
Did you ever use it at all?
No.
How about the 5220 Club? Did you ever use that?
No. No.
Did you ever stay in contact with anyone that you had served with?
No. No.
Any veterans organizations?
No.
You never did?
No. I met a couple of guys that we were friendly with. They liked my daughter. She was cute at that age. I don't know what happened to her. My wife would be carrying her in her arms, you know. She was about 3.5 years old, and we struggled back. We hit a place in Texas. I can't remember the name now. And we finally got a room, had something to eat. So the three of us go to bed. Then my wife says, "Get up and get her a glass of water." I go in, I put on the light, and the sink was covered with roaches. Oh my God. I says, "You know, I think we ought to leave early." So at 4 o'clock in the morning, we're packed in, we're moving on.
How do you think the time you were in service, did it affect your life in any way or change your life?
No, it's just that I appreciated what the president had done, and then Truman had acted wisely. He didn't delay laying a bomb down. But I don't know. I don't think so, but by that time I was kind of accustomed to it. I had been in the New York State Guard, maybe about 2 years or so. We came up to Camp
Smith?
on the Hudson.
Camp
Sam
Smith?
Smith.
Yeah, and for 2 weeks, I said to my wife, "We're going to leave you for 2 weeks." She said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to camp." But this was before the war broke out.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, okay. Thank you very much for your interview.
Well,